Well, welcome and thanks for joining us on the first ever The At Odds Pod. I'm delighted to say that throughout the football season and all the big sporting events we've got coming up, we've got some brilliant experts that are going to be here to cast our eyes over everything you need to know, what you should be backing, and everything you could possibly need about every sporting event. Joining me on the panel today, I've got Jake Ashton, who's been one of our regulars. Jake's been writing about sports for a very, very long time online. You can find a lot of his work online. We've also got Sam Farley. Farley, you are a big American sports fan, going to be finding us the value throughout the NFL season, and he loves his football as well. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. We're going to kick off by talking about the Premier League. We've got some great bets for the weekend as well, our best bets across a range of sports, everything you're going to need to hopefully find a winner or two over the weekend. But this is a Premier League special to kick off with. We're going to talk about the title race. Odds will appear along the screen. As you can imagine, Man City are the current 4-7 favourites. Liverpool next in 9-4, Spurs 14-1, Chelsea 16-1, Man United 25-1. Right, that's enough from me. Jake's going to tell you why you should be backing his Man City side at 4-7 to win the title.
So, hello everyone. Man City, they've got to be favourites straight away. Like 4-7 is a perfect price because the way they won the league last year, I know they won it in the last game and in the last few minutes of the season, but they've made some great transfers. Obviously, they've signed Erling Haaland, Calvin Phillips. So players, so Gabriel Jesus, Raheem Sterling, but I just think that it's something that just needs to be set. I think for City to win the league. Liverpool are second favourites. I don't quite see Liverpool as second favourites in my eyes. I do think Spurs will offer more of a threat, but I think that City are the favourites for the Prem, and I think the certs for the Prem too.
Okay. Sam, I know you agree with Jake about Man City, but rather than understand and hear why you think Man City are really good, why do you think Liverpool are not a better 9-4?
So you look at the top six. City, sure, they've lost Sterling. They have lost Zinchenko, great squad player. Jesus, good squad player. They've lost players, but they have improved overall. You've got Man United, they can't be as bad again. That's just a fact. Spurs have improved talent-wise. Arsenal improved talent-wise. Chelsea may be a bit of a question mark. We'll get onto that in a bit, I'm sure. And even the likes of Newcastle have improved. Liverpool, for me, are the only one who I think there are seriously question marks over, because ultimately Núñez has come in and he's kind of really looked feast or famine, either brilliant or dreadful. So I think the best thing to do there, and they've obviously lost Mane, is kind of assume maybe they're neutral. And I think with so many players, so many teams, increasing in ability, you can't afford to stand still. And ultimately, I think City are just too good, too many good players. And we've seen what's happened with that Liverpool team when they get a few injuries previously. And, I just don't think they can keep that up, to be honest.
Okay. No, that's a very succinct assessment. Well, you're both wrong, because there's a really good value play in this market for me. And it's not Liverpool against the favourites. It's going to be Spurs. An Antonio Conte team that we've seen being run into the ground in pre-season. Poor old Son going back home to South Korea to be made to run laps at the National Stadium and then throwing up. But the point is, you can expect Antonio Conte's side to really be delivering, I think, from the moment things kick off. Now, they're 14-1. I've backed them as an each-way proposition because I think it's a bet that you could potentially trade out later in the year. We have seen Man City make a sluggish start to the season before. I'm right in thinking, Jake, as a City fan, last year lost the first game of the season. Liverpool, definitely for me, this is a bit of a transition team now. I think they'll be fine this year. I don't think they're going to lack for winning a trophy. I just think Spurs at 14s, I could see them quite easily being half that price after the first 6 games if things go their way. I'm not saying they're going to win the league. I just think as a betting proposition, I think you could probably make a nice trade out on that bet potentially, or just sit on it and see where it takes you. The World Cup as well, guys, just really quickly. Which Premier League side do you think is going to be most impacted by the World Cup this year? I'll start with you, Jake.
I think it probably goes against me picking City as favourites, but I think City will be impacted by it just due to the fact that in the last 3 or 4 years when they have been competing for the title, it's been the festive period where City have really kicked on. They've gone on like a 9 or 10 winning streak. And I feel that having the World Cup just before that might affect the squad. The only plus side is Erling Haaland isn't going to go to the World Cup. so he gets a big rest, which is good.
Yeah, I like that. For me, I think it's too hard to tell, really. I think the teams it's really going to boost, if anybody, is going to be those teams at the bottom. If they need to make a change, they're going to have a bit of time to do that, get a new manager in. They're probably not going to have that many internationals, and they're just going to be able to really kind of gel and get something going. So I think ultimately it's going to affect the bottom of the table a bit more than the top, personally.
Yeah,
interesting. I'm not going to be drawing it. I do think it's going to be fascinating to see if you have an England team going deep, which team's going to be most affected by that. It's going to be strange. It's going to certainly shake up the season. Now,
all right,
Sam,
guys, I've got a question to ask you now. It's simple. Who's going to be the top goal scorer in the Premier League? Who will get that famous trophy at the end?
Well, obviously, like we mentioned before, being a City fan, I've seen Gabriel Jesus leave our club and go to Arsenal, and I feel that Jesus himself will be a contender for the Golden Boot. Now, in the last few weeks of the season, Jesus was arguably City's best player. He pushed on, and a lot of City fans are actually gutted that he's left the club. But I think that under Arteta, where he's had a relationship working with him before, while he was assistant manager at City, I think that Jesus can push on. And at odds of 20-1, it's a massive price. I think 20-1's huge for him, to be honest.
He's been asked to play a number of roles at City. How easy do you think he'll adjust to being, and do you think he will be at Arsenal, the man expected to score 25 goals a season? Do you not think there'll be some temptation from Arteta that, for example, if they've got a game away from home, they start deploying him as a bit of a false nine or push him wider?
Potentially, yeah, but I think that the many positions that he can play just helps him out further. The thing with Jesus always is that he'll always end up in that 6-yard box. He'll always be in and around there, and he'll always get chances. And I think that we've seen Arsenal in the last 2 seasons create chance after chance after chance and just not have that striker in the box. And I feel like Jesus is going to be that striker who's actually going to start converting those chances.
His goal line as well of 13.5 goals with one book he has that as a line. I think he's incredibly generous. I think that is a beauty. I'm not going to lie, my boss pointed it out when it was 12.5. Got on. Now it's 13.5, and I still think that's a
put that trumpet away, Farley. We don't want to hear about how you got the value then. We want to give viewers the value now, but it's still.
Who's your pick? Let's have a good one.
Right. So I do not understand the price of Son as defending co-winner of the Golden Boot or top goal scorer, whatever you want to call it. I don't understand it. I think it's just the wrong price. And I know people are going to think I'm some sort of mad loon on Spurs at the moment, but I just think you've got a man there that's played really well. I don't think the signing of Richarlison is suddenly going to change how Spurs play overnight. I know a lot of Son's work comes through teaming up with Harry Kane. That's not going to change. I think, if anything, last season showed that there was another level to Harry Kane's game in the way that he actually became a bit of an assist monster, and Son benefited from that. The one thing I'm worried about, will we see a bit of rotation at Spurs?
Maybe, yeah.
If Lucas Moura stays as well, they've got an awful lot of players that are in those sort of front 3 positions. And Harry Kane with the World Cup, is there a chance that he's going to take a bit of a rest when he comes back? I don't know. I thought Son was just the wrong price. I don't really understand. If either of you two can tell me that you'd lay me bigger than the 16-1 that's kicking around, I think you'd be mad.
It's an interesting one, because of Erling Haaland coming into the league, he's favourite 3-1. The likes of Salah, who we've seen just be so lethal in the past, is out to 5s, which I think is big. And the guy I've picked is out to 7s. It is Harry Kane. Look, the same reasons as Son, really, in that I think he's a great player, playing for a team who's going to show improvement. But I think if you looked at back last year, it took him a couple of months really to almost kind of, I think it was that double kind of impact to him personally, with the move to Man City falling through and also England failing to win the Euros. So I think that kind of really hit him hard. And he was, let's be honest, pretty rubbish for about 2 or 3 months. And then in the run up to Christmas, he started to get a bit hotter and then became the player that we know a bit more. So I think at 7-1, really, really good price.
Now, on the other side of things, who do we feel is going to be in danger of going down this season? Because I'm looking at the relegation sides this year, and it feels like it's very competitive. The league. I know we say this every year. The league's very competitive, but I'm just not too sure who is going to go down this year. Now, I've picked Everton to go down, which they were in the relegation battle last year. I've seen them in pre-season, and I'm not quite sure what.
Are you going to hang your hat on pre-season, Jake, though? Because I'll be honest, I think you've got a better argument for backing Everton to go down based on the fact that last year they were shocking and they lost Richarlison, who, let's be frank, I mean, that iconic picture of him with the flare, I mean, it is brilliant. But he really did drag them to survival in some respects. And I think my bigger concern for Everton is they were rubbish last year. The side's a lot weaker now. I mean, pre-season, I wouldn't hang my hat on that. I can see why you like them.
I think the reason why I've spoke about pre-season, though, is because similar to when Leicester won the league, they won it by going on that massive winning run, following it over to the next season. Are Everton going to have some of that form of last year towards the end hanging over their heads a bit? And are they going to carry it over to this season? I think odds are 5-1, though. It is just massive. I think it's a big price compared to the other teams. Who do you think is in danger of going down this year?
I think we're both the same here, actually, aren't we, Boz?
Same name, same selection. I'll be interested to hear your reasoning first, and then I'll try and make a case for whatever crumb you leave me.
So Brentford 11-4. I think they're fifth favourites to go down. I just think it's a really good price for a team who they've lost their best creative player, Eriksen. I think they started to look flat after about maybe November, December last year. And that signing of Eriksen really kind of rejuvenated them a bit. And now he's gone. I don't know. I don't think this is a great team. I think Tony's a good striker, and ultimately you need a goal scorer in that position. But if he gets injured, they are so screwed. But there's just the other teams around them. I mean, I think Bournemouth probably go down, but Forest, there's something about that team, something about that fan base. I believe in them now. Fulham, they are just too talented. I think they'll finally stay up. Leeds, getting a lot of stick for old Ted Lasso there, head coach, but they have signed quite well, I think, despite getting rid of Rafinha. So I think these other teams are looking quite good. And if there's a team who looked, like you mentioned, sort of bad at the end of last season, I'd say Brentford without Eriksen classifies as quite bad for me. And at 11-4, I'm definitely happy to take that on.
My kind of angle with them, just to add my little sort of extra segment, is I always think it's the difficult second album, isn't it? That second season. I almost you don't want to see a team completely change their DNA, but I don't feel like Brentford really have gone out and gone, right, we want to become an established Premier League side. As you mentioned, they've lost Eriksen, which isn't surprising, but nor do I feel like they've really put down a marker to go and replace him. And, whereas take a look at Forest, who, I'll be honest, that Jesse Lingard move, there's not many transfers that surprise us these days. I really was, obviously the initial, once you hear the stories about it, I was surprised that they're willing to break the wage structure on a 1-year deal for a man that's played well for one season out the last 3. But what I would say about it is I think it shows ambition, and I think it keeps everyone at the club on their toes. For me, that's the sort of signing I'd love to have seen at Brentford make, where they go put down a marker and go, well, we've lost Eriksen, we need to replace him. Where's our marquee signing? Hard work's great, but fans need to get excited about players, and you need talisman that are proven in the Premier League. That's why Forest, for me, out of the 3 at the bottom that have come up, will be the team that stay up. Fulham, I've got concerns about. I don't think they're quite there. And Bournemouth, for me, it's easy to write them off. It's lazy to perhaps write them off, but I think they're going to be cabin fodder this year.
I agree.
I think that's fair.
Which brings us on nicely, I suppose, to the old sack race, which is a market I love to get involved in. It's a horrible market, isn't it? Imagine if people would bet on us to lose our jobs. I'm sure we'd all be short prices. But yeah, it's interesting. And I think, Jake, you've got a bit of a theme to your selection here.
Yeah, I followed on from the Everton relegation bet with Frank Lampard. I think, again, we spoke about pre-season and you said you can't really look at pre-season, but Everton did get thumped 4-0 off Minnesota United, which is a bit of a madness. And then the interview after that Lampard gave, he pretty much threw all his players under the bus. He said that we need to sort our ideas out, really. And I think for that to happen so soon is a bit crazy. I really thought that Lampard would have like a progression from last season, kick on from the whole relegation fight, sign some players. Nothing seems to be happening for him this window, so I feel that he is favourite in the market now at 5-1. There is a fair chance of him going first.
It's interesting, isn't it? The tactic of throwing players under the bus will only work so many times.
Exactly.
And,
exactly.
If you're having to wheel that out potentially, in pre-season, we could see a bit of an issue. Sam, who's your pick to get the dreaded first man out the door?
Yeah, so I kind of, full disclosure to those watching this and listening to this, we kind of first came up with this earlier in the week. So I had this name down early, and since then I've seen that Frank Lampard interview, and I've got to say I've never seen a manager throw players under the bus in pre-season. So if I had to put my money on it now, I would follow Jake. But because I picked this guy out earlier, and I do think he's going to leave the job at some point this season, it is Thomas Tuchel at 16-1. I think he's a great manager, but there do seem to be some cracks appearing at Chelsea. Their recruitment is interesting. They've got Koulibaly, who's 31 now, adapting to a new league at that age. I mean, I know we said similar about Thiago Silva, and that worked really well. So you probably give them the benefit of the doubt, but there are still question marks there. Raheem Sterling, I think's a fantastic player. I've got no problem with that, but they've not got that big centre forward I think people were expecting yet. They've obviously got this new ownership involved. They seem to be, the owners wanted Ronaldo, Tuchel didn't want Ronaldo. All these odd sort of stories that seem to be popping up. But I don't know what they want, and I think Tuchel is a guy who's not going. He's dealt with interfering owners at PSG. I don't think he's going to deal with it again. So I think there's a good chance he leaves. I think they're out of all the top teams, they're the ones who I think are most susceptible to sort of some regression this year, and I think that will come, and I think he will probably lose his job before Christmas.
16-1's a big price to go first, though, isn't it? It's 16-1.
It's just, I always think personally, and I'm trying to recall now, the most shocking sacking I can remember towards the start of the season, they do tend to come for clubs that are struggling. Do you remember when Ian Holloway was at Palace and he got them promoted as a Palace fan, and he got given all of about 6 weeks, I think, into the job, and it was, you're out the door. And I do always personally like to look traditionally further down the table, but my manager that I'm going to pick here has been really well established. Brendan Rodgers at Leicester, I think, could be in trouble this year. They've not signed anyone of note this summer. They've lost Yuri Tielemans, who, let's be honest, is one of the most underrated players, I think, in the Premier League. I must say, I really like him. Good for goal, good for his...
Is he definitely gone?
I think he's on the way out, is he not? Am I not? He's not going to be going, but I'm not sure is he? So I think he'll be out the door. Put it this way, Sam, I don't reckon he'll be there past January. Let's see. Maybe I'm wrong, but
that's fair.
I understand he might not be there. They've got an aging Jamie Vardy who, can still deliver the goods, but he's not as much of the focal point of that team as it was. The spine feels old. I just wonder with Leicester, has the seasons of the Thursday nights caught up with them with a relatively small squad? If Harvey Barnes doesn't hit the ground running this season, there's not enough depth for me for that squad. And the Thursday-Sunday routine clearly took it out of them because their consistency was mixed last year. And I just think a double-figure price, Brendan Rodgers, really rate him as a manager. But also, is he not going to be after a bit of a change soon, lads? Do we not think he's perhaps gone as far as he could with Leicester?
Potentially. He's been linked with massive jobs in the past. He's been linked with a move back to Chelsea. He's been linked with City in the past too, so maybe...
And it's another one where I don't think Leicester are going to pull the trigger quickly on him, but I can just see a bit of a drip. And I looked at their early fixtures, and they don't necessarily on paper look amazingly difficult. They've got some big teams in the first couple of weeks as well as some easy ones. But I almost worry more, if you've got to play City, Liverpool and Chelsea in the first 5 weeks, well, people aren't going to expect you to be flying up the table. But if you've got beatable teams and you're not winning those games, that's when I think the board get almost more of a trigger finger to pull, because they're suddenly going, we've not got the possibility of returning from where we are here. And there are good managers on the market. I'm sure Sean Dyche would be a complete reverse of what Brendan Rodgers is, but actually, Leicester are a club, they have to stay in the Premier League. The infrastructure's there to do that. They've got the talent to stay in it, but I just think Rodgers could be the one that could be a bit iffy.
He was definitely under a bit of pressure down the stretch last season as well, before James Maddison sort of turned into Gaza for a couple of weeks. But look, let's quickly move on now. I think this section we just entitled kind of any other bets we like. So if there's any kind of football-based, Premier League-based bets, I want to hear them. So Boz, why don't you go first? Tell us what you got in store.
Yeah, in 60 seconds, I'll give you a really easy one. I'm a Crystal Palace fan. I was remarkably downcast on Patrick Vieira joining us last year, and I was so wrong. So wrong. As a result, I'm putting Palace up on the handicap this season. We got to kick on. He's been backed by the board. We're plus 41 points. I mean, if we can have an above average season, which I think we can. Bear in mind, last year we did okay. We were a bit inconsistent. We conceded so many late goals to end up turning 3 points into one or losing completely. We had a really good FA Cup run last year. I'd be surprised if we get to the semi-final again. That distracted the players a bit, I think, towards the end of the season. I really think we can make a push to be kind of in that top 10 region. And if we get there, on 50 plus points, I think we'll be challenging for the handicap league. So that's where everyone gets a head start. Just explain the handicap league. Apart from Man City, they're on 0, Liverpool will be on 2, and then so on and so forth. And we've been given 41 points by some bookmakers. We're 16-1 to win the league with that head start. I really fancy it.
I like it. So Boz, Jake, what have you got in store for us?
Mine's pretty straightforward. I've got De Bruyne to get the PFA Player of the Year, 7-1. Again, pre-season, he's just scored a brace in his first game. He's looked standard De Bruyne. He's actually had a full rest, which is quite rare for De Bruyne. He's usually playing for months and months and months all the way through. The other thing that's important about this market and this award is that the players vote for it, and a lot of the players love De Bruyne. Every other team you say who's the favourite player in the league, they always say De Bruyne. So I think 7-1 is something he's always in and around the market. The other thing I've gone for is the Forest to have a top half finish. I think that we've spoke about Forest transfer business. Lingard in, Dean Henderson in. I love Steve Cooper too. I think he's a brilliant manager. I think the work that he's done since becoming Forest manager, how far he's got them, is unreal. It's absolutely unreal. And I just think that 10-1, massive price for him to get a top half finish this season.
And when you think how clustered that can be, that sort of 9th to 13th, good shout, Jake. I like it.
So what have I got? I've got 2 here, First of all, going to go through these super quickly. Jaden Sancho, his line on goals at the moment is over 5.5, which I think he's been there a year now, or he'd have been there a year by the time the season starts. And we are going to see him improve. I think there's no doubt in that. We saw times last year he did look good. But I've kind of said this on social media and everywhere, really, when I spoke about Man United this year. This is a team who basically haven't been coached properly for 3 years.
Yeah,
I think that the base level we see from their players is going to be hugely superior, just on the basis of the fact they're going to be well coached. So I think Sancho, 6 goals he'll need in the Premier League. I think he'll get that potentially even before England jet off to Qatar.
Yeah.
So I think.
Well, the other thing is we've seen with Erik ten Hag when he was Ajax manager, he had players like Anthony. Focuses on his wingers quite a lot, so I think that Sancho is going to be so integral to the way that team play.
Yeah, definitely. One more. Jake, you're going to love this one as well as a City boy. 33-1 request a bet. A little Erling Haaland special. 5 with the head, 5 with the right, 5 with the left. In the Premier League. So I kind of looked at his numbers last year for Dortmund, and this is across all competitions, so bear that in mind. But also bear in mind he was injured for a lot of time, so he missed a lot of games. Yeah. He scored 4 with his weak foot, 5, more than 5 with his strong foot, and 4 headers. So I think he was pretty close last year in a team that are scoring for fun. If he is even remotely as good as some people think, and he settles into this league early, I think at 33-1 you could get a bit of a steal there.
Maybe it's because I work for a bookie, but God,
it's a bug bet.
It's a fun season-long bet, and I suppose that's a really important thing to highlight. That
it's one of those, like when you're watching the game, City have gone 4-0 up, they're 10 points clear. It's November. the league's already over. It gives you at least something to watch their games
Yeah,
and
no,
enjoy. So I'm
I
on
quite
it.
like it. I quite like it. I suppose. Yeah, maybe I'll
like
have a
it, yeah.
fiver on. But just to say, actually, I think it's raises a really good point that we're talking here, and we all like to do our own research and own stats. But the most important thing, however you choose to bet, is to keep it fun. If you're following our tips or backing your own, make sure you keep it fun. Do give yourself a bit of a check and measure on balances. There's loads of great tools out there, deposit limits, that kind of thing. It's a really important discussion to have. And, we all love a bet, but by the same token, the tagline's right. When the fun stops, it is time to stop, and always reflect on that and enjoy betting for what it should do, which is just a bit of entertainment alongside the sport. Now, lads, I think you want to take a deep dive into the lower leagues very quickly. I'll make my one and only bet case, which is going to be Middlesbrough for the Championship. I think they're about 11-1. There is a bookmaker out there paying an additional place on these leagues. So if you're going to have a little cheeky anti-post treble, you might want to look at that each way. Middlesbrough, quite simple. I don't ever like backing teams that have dropped from the Premier League to go straight back up. The squads tend to change a lot. With the way the transfer window is, you'll get a lot of players that are going to get late moves. I think Watford, I'd be keeping my eye on there. I can see them having quite a few still to leave the club. I don't like the atmosphere of a team that's been relegated. Often there's a lot of egos there. So I like a team that potentially can kick on from where they were last year. A double-figure price for me is just wrong for Middlesbrough. Chris Wilder certainly knows what to do in that division. He's got a fantastic chairman there, very supportive. So Borough for me in the Championship, my only bet. I know you two want to take a dive across all three, so I'm going to throw it over to Jake and let him run through his picks.
I do fully agree too with Borough to go up. I think that's a great price at 11-1. Like you say, Chris Wilder, he's got so much experience there, and he's a great manager. So I agree with that too. Personally, I've gone for Burnley to get promoted this year. I think they've made some good transfers, and obviously, I've watched Company go into management. I've tried to follow him closely.
Detecting a little theme with your picks here.
Yeah, maybe. I just think at 4-1, with some of the signings they've made, it's been clear that he's tried to raid City a bit, get the youth and stuff. Signed some great players from us. So Burnley to get promoted at 4-1, good price. It's a great price. What do you reckon is going to happen in Championship, Father?
For me, I think the safest bet you can get here is Reading to go down. They survived by 4 points last time. They were incredibly lucky that Derby obviously had all their woes. They've got this huge stadium with no fans in it. It's just a soulless bowl in Reading. And ultimately, I don't really think they've got good enough players. I just think they're down 2-1. You can get on that, and I think that's just such a good price given what we saw last year.
Yeah. Now League One, I've not gone for a tip for League One. I don't really have a clue about League One. Boz, I'm pretty sure you're similar.
No,
League One's not really our. Farley, you've anything in League One you fancy or?
Yes, I do have something. So League One is my my favourite league in the world because the mighty Plymouth Argyle play in it. And I'm not going to tip us to go up. I think it's going to be narrowly avoid promotion, probably avoid the playoff spots. But one team I do think is going to go down is Cheltenham. Now, I've got a lot of Cheltenham friends, weirdly, considering they only have about 10 fans. I seem to be good mates with half of them, but they are really nervous going into this season. They had Michael Duff has left for Barnsley, and you talk about young managers with kind of a glowing reputation. It really went under the radar, I think, across the English football landscape, how good he was doing at Cheltenham, because they are such a small, no disrespect, absolutely tin pot club. And they're 2-1 to go down. And I think they've lost some players. They still have their best player, Alfie May, but I don't know, 2-1, I think is a good price for a team who I can't even remember the name of the manager they picked up. It's a high risk kind of appointment. I think a guy without kind of maybe the amount of experience you'd necessarily want in a dogfight. But 2-1 to go down Cheltenham all day for me. Sorry to my friends who see this.
Now League Two, I've looked at the League Two markets quite a lot actually because there are a lot of teams that are local to me that I've taken interest in. Stockport County
is a really
has gone straight.
Manchester-based league, isn't it, Jake?
Yeah.
Do you go and watch any of them?
I go watch Salford quite a lot because they are like the local team to me in terms of the football league. But now Stockport have been promoted up to League Two. I'm going to go watch Stockport this season. I I can't believe that Stockport are actually the favourites to win the league straight away. I mean, they have got the financial backing. They won the conference and they've gone up from there. But I can't believe that they are favourites. I've looked at the odds and I've seen Bradford at 7-1. Now, the reason I have looked at Bradford and thought it's a big price is solely down to Mark Hughes, to be honest. I think this is his full season. He came in February, kind of shored the ship up a little bit, and I think that such a big name in that league is mental at 7-1. But the thing is with Bradford, we've seen them struggle quite a lot over the last few years. I think that it's either going to be make or break for them. They're never going to be. It's either going to be up for promotion straight away, or they're going to be fighting for relegation. Farley, that league, anything that seems of interest of you in League Two, or?
Yeah, there's a couple of teams who I think have got a really good chance of promotion. Firstly, I think Mansfield, they were 7th last year, just made it into the playoffs. I think they leveled with Swindon. They did that without having anybody who was particularly banging in goals. They just got a really good squad, and I think they've added to that. They've got some good players coming in. So I think Mansfield at 11-4 is a good shout for a team who could just take what I'd say is a fairly minor step. And I would say the teams who've dropped down aren't particularly good, like in the way they have been in previous years. So I think the top of that league is going to be a bit easier to kind of get to compared to say last season, for example. But another team I just want to highlight is 15-2 Crawley Town. They've been taken over by a sort of pack of crypto bros, and it's a really
what could go wrong?
Yeah, it's a really bizarre situation. So they've sort of got in like 8-9 players, I think now. One of whom is Dom Telford, a former Plymouth player, but he was at, who was it last season? It was Newport, and he scored an obscene amount of goals. I think it's 25 odd goals, got the golden boot in League Two, and now he's back with Crawley. And I do think that, you know, they were mid-table last year, and it doesn't take much in this league to really push on. And I think these crypto bros, I feel like it's going to be feast or famine. They're either going down or they're going up, no in between. But 15-2, I think it's a really good price.
It's either going to be a promotion party or it's going to be a Netflix documentary about how things will go horribly wrong.
We're either going to see Bitcoin 2021 or Bitcoin 2022. We don't know exactly which way yet, but it's either going up or down quite dramatically.
Crawley Town to the moon should be their new tagline.
Rocket emojis.
Does that wrap up everything football related? Anyone else got anything else they need to shout out? Have I missed any leagues? Are we all good there?
No, I'm just going to say one thing. Wrexham 6-4 to go up. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, well, with their celebrity backing, who knows? Don't forget, we want to hear from you guys, though. Add your comments below with the best bets. We'll do this weekly as well as we're going through the season. We love to hear your big football wins or who you're tipping up. And even better, if you can tell them to us in the comments before they happen, we'll respect that a lot more. Like I say, get that subscribe button hit. We've got loads of fun stuff coming, including, I think it's going to be me talking about the King George now, which is the big horse race of the weekend at Ascot. This is a race that often sees younger horses that are coming through, taking on more experienced horses that have already hit the heights. I'm really excited for this year's renewal. It looks pretty good on paper. We've got, I would say, a fair marker in the favourite, who's 6-4 Westover. Finished third in the Derby at Epsom, which is one of the biggest flat races, but is the biggest flat race of the season. He then went over to Ireland and won the Irish version very impressively. He's a 3-year-old, so he gets a weight allowance from the older horses. Next in the betting is Emily Upjohn, an 11-4 shot. She ran in the female version, the Felix version of the race, the Oaks at Epsom, and under a really bad ride from Frankie Dettori. To be perfectly honest, she ended up finishing second when I think she should have won, probably. Since then, Frankie Dettori has split up and reunited with the trainer of this horse, just as you do. It's like one big Love Island in horse racing, it feels like sometimes. I definitely think there's a point to prove here. Should they be that far apart in the market? Possibly not. I'd have Emily Upjohn, maybe slightly shorter. Mishriff's the shortest price of the more experienced horses and older horses in the race. He's a fantastic globe-trotting horse, seems to be able to win anywhere. I just wonder if he'd be better suited at York later on in the season over 1 mile 2, taking on the likes of Baid. That would be a really exciting race in the Juddmonte. You've got the Arc winner, one at a massive price. Sam, I think you backed the Arc winner at a huge, but there we go. That's enough after time from you. We'll keep you on mute. Coming from Germany, Would traditionally want the ground a bit softer, looking at the form book. But I wouldn't dismiss his chances lightly. And I've had a bet anti-post on Broom at a bigger price when there were still 3 places. I thought his Ascot wing was pretty good. Pile driver, I think it's safe to say we can write off, but a 33-1. I'm not telling you too much. So I'll probably have to stick with Broom, really, I suppose, to try and upset one of the favourites each way. We only get the 2 places, which is a shame. But it's a good race. And even if you just want to watch it, you'll definitely pick up some clues for later on in the season. And we'll try and cover horse racing in a really quick, succinct way to give you guys what you need to hear. I know it's a foreign language to some of you, but it's a brilliant sport. And we'll be building in Cheltenham anti-post portfolios before you know it when the winter comes.
So where and when can I watch this?
It'd be ITV Racing, Jake, or on Racing TV, or if you have a flutter, your bookmaker will be streaming it. Most bookies are showing racing for free now. Saturday afternoon, get involved. It's the one race to definitely keep an eye on this weekend.
Cool. All right, cool. The other thing that's happening this weekend, UFC London. I am absolutely buzzing for this. Now, I went last year, and it was one of the best atmospheres I've experienced of anything in person, to be honest. Sadly, not going this year, but it's something that I think a lot of people are getting more and more interested in, especially with it being in London. But it is still a bit niche. Now, there's some well-known fighters that are going to be fighting. The main person who a lot of people know is Paddy Pimblett. Now, Paddy the Baddy is getting a lot of traction on social media lately. And he is 2-5 to win this weekend. He faces a guy called Jordan Leavitt, who Paddy really should beat. But the last 24 hours, Paddy's really got angry in his interviews. He's been saying he wants to take his head off and stuff like that. So I've never really seen Paddy so...
the pay-per-view buys
angry.
Can't be going too well.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. I'm always a bit suspicious of that kind of. Do you think he's overthinking the fight a bit, or is it just a case he's trying to really, get him front of the bill?
I think no matter what, he's always going to be the big name on a lot of the cards that he's on because, again, his popularity on social media, his followers are just going up and up and up every week. The bet that I've seen is 13-2 for him to win by KO in the first round. Now, I feel that could happen just because purely due to the way that he's talking. He's saying he wants to take his head off. He wants to finish him. 13-2 is a very, very big price for him to win the first round. The other bets that I've seen for the card this weekend, we've got Paul Craig fighting. He's a Scottish lad. He's had performance of the night. It's 3 out of the last 4 fights. He submits his fighters quite a lot. So he's 9-4 to win by submission. 13-2 for him to do it in the first round. Molly McCann, she's another fighter from Liverpool. Her last fight, she fought at UFC London last time, and she had a spinning elbow that has been on a lot of highlight reels and stuff. That was her first knockout win in UFC. She's 7-2 to win by knockout again this time round. It could well be that the audience and everyone around him is just going to push her up to fight well again and get a knockout again. At 7-2 is a big price, but again, last time out was her only knockout in UFC, and she's had 7 or 8 fights in there too. The main headline fight is Tom Aspinall against Curtis Blades. Now, this is the toughest fight that Tom Aspinall's faced. Tom Aspinall is an English fighter. He fights from the Northwest. But this is the toughest fight that he's had. Curtis Blades is a very, very good fighter. But I just think, again, a lot of people are questioning Tom Aspinall, and that happened last time at UFC London, and he came out and got the win easily. And I feel that at odds of 8-11, Tom Aspinall wins probably my bet of the week, to be honest, because he's such a good fighter and he's very, very he does everything perfectly. His grappling's good, his takedowns are good. Everything that he does is just really good for his height and his weight. He's weighed in at 251 pounds, so he's heavy boy this weekend too. So it's going to be a really, really, really good card, I think. I'm looking forward to it. Anyone going to be watching it, do you reckon? Either of you going to have a little bit of an interest
honestly,
in it?
I've tried UFC, and I'll try it again just for you, Jake, and I might have
Thank you.
I might follow your tips. I don't know. I'm a casual boxing fan. That's probably as far as my combat sports go. I can't. But Paddy the Baddy, one thing I'll give him, you need people like that to be able to push your sport. And I do think it's quite funny. We've gone from horse racing to UFC. horse racing is desperate for some more characters because it's just, to the man on the street. I would know if you took a UFC version of me, they'd know nothing about horse racing, whereas I know about Paddy the Baddy because he's all over TikTok, all over my social media feeds. So no, fair play. I believe, though, we're going to change tack again, and Farley's going to give us a little bit of anti-post views towards the end of the year, right?
Yeah, so we kind of mentioned characters there. I'm going to give you a little anti-post bet for the Sports Personality of the Year Awards. And this is one of the ones I absolutely love it. In a former life with a former employer, if there was any movement on this, we'd knock out a story quick as you like because, you know, it gets people's attention. They absolutely love talking about this. And pretty much as much just so people can go, oh, I thought it was sports personality, not sports best with no personality, which is the same debate that happens
every time
and time
Andy
again.
Murray was winning it. Christ.
Yeah, so look, I love an anti-post futures bet because it just, I think you get such good odds. It's a lot of fun. But here's one I think is really good. Beth Mead of England's Lionesses to be Sports Personality of the Year. She's 10-1 best price, as short as 7s, I think, with some books. But I think it's just a great price. She's currently scored 5 goals for England. They've reached the semi-final. They're short odds to win the lot now, probably to the point I don't really think it's worth it. But if they do win that, you've got to think she has an incredibly high chance of winning this. She'd probably go into favourite, I would assume, especially if she was to score in the final, for example. But at the moment, you've got Ronnie O'Sullivan's favourite. Look, I love Ronnie as much as anyone, and I think this is an award he does deserve. But it was a bit earlier in the year. I think things might go against him a bit. You got Jake Whiteman, who obviously won in the distance running the other day. But ultimately, I think sports fans would have paid attention to that. But most people, they'll be like, Jake who? You got Harry Kane, his 4th favourite. England are going to need to win the World Cup for that to happen, or have an incredibly good. I think
Quick
even
question. How's it going to work? Because isn't the sports personality usually around the time of the World Cup?
Well, Jake, you've got some nice little info on this, haven't you?
So the sports personality is currently set for the 18th of December, which is the same date as the World Cup final. But they're looking at moving it to the midweek after, just before Christmas, just in case we do win the World Cup, which is obviously going to happen, surely. This is the year, isn't it, Farley? Surely.
It's coming home. It's coming home. Sam's not actually. Sam's going to be our correspondent, our man on the ground. Somehow he's pulled a few strings and he's going to be out there. And we will be covering the World Cup in plenty of detail in what feels like it should be next summer, but it's not. It's going to be November. We've all got to get a head around it. And I think we'll all stop moaning about it and just get on with thinking about it once the season's underway. Who's going to make the England squad? I'm sure we'll throw a few bits that way. Sam, was there anything else you wanted to talk about while we had you there?
No, but I tell you what, I know a man who's about to give us a couple of tips. And look, I just want to say this before we introduce them. If there's one man who gives you successful tips on just the weirdest sort of rubbish ever, it is the man, Jake Ashton himself. And he's got 2 tips for us here. One from a TV show that you're almost certainly being forced to watch because of your girlfriend. Or secondly, from an event that I don't know anything about this. So first of all, I want to know, Jake, what the hell is Fish-O-Mania?
Fish-O-Mania. It's an event that happens every year. Basically, it does what it says in the tin, really. It's like fishing's version of WrestleMania. So they just all sit around a massive pond, fish for 6 or 7 hours, and whoever's fished the most weight on average, because they go around and weigh it all up like every hour, wins. So my pick for this, Andy Bennett, right? 11-4. He's currently favourite, right? But I've had a little look on Fish-O-Mania's Facebook page, right? The pins have all been set. So where all the guys are sat, that's already been drawn out. And according to a little comment I've seen on there, the wind is all going to be blowing where Andy Bennett is going to be sat. All the fish are going to go there. 11-4.
Sam, just wondering, can you see the credibility of the podcast anywhere? Because I think it's just gone missing from that last segment. My word, Jake, that is. Listen,
this is what we love. This is what you want to be shouting out in the pub, you know.
You in suit of trying to find an 11-4 shot, you are checking Facebook comments about fish and wind.
That's what you've got to do, though.
It's
That
got
is
it's
what
got
you've
to win.
got
I'll
to
be
do.
honest, Jake. If you want to come back next week, that's the only way I'd look at that
But
one.
the other thing I will say is the guy who sat the other side of him, Adam Richards, his odds have come down like drastically, so he's now like 11-1 to win it. But Andy Bennett's like the heavy favourite, 11-4. You've got Jamie Hughes, second favourite, 7-1. But Adam Richards is at the other side of him, so one of them two, 11-1 or 11-4, it's value. That's all I'm going to say. It is value. But the other thing that I like the look of, Love Island. We all watch Love Island, and of course we do. Now, Ekin-Su and Davide, still odds-on favourites at the minute. There's something about that couple that I just think there's a chance that it could all go wrong. And I like the look of some of the other odds, like Andrew and Tasha, 9-1. Great price. Great price, because the boys have been ganging up on Tasha for the last week. We're starting to see the public liking Tasha more and more. All I see is on the trending topics every night, Love Island, people gassing Tasha out. She's lovely. The boys are ganging up on her. 9-1 winning couple. I think Ekin-Su and Davide have probably got it set. But if anything does happen, I know we've seen some bombshells coming last night. Some flirting going on with Davide and the new girls.
Davide and Ekin-Su are a new cultural icon as far as I'm concerned. I think without them, that series would have been pretty dull. I've only dipped in and out, and I'm completely biased because I've sat on them at 18-1. So, yeah.
I just think that market is just one of them markets that it changes drastically, like night by night. But a lot of bookmakers aren't going to be the type of people who watch that. So it's something definitely to keep an eye on if you do watch it, because you can see yourself what's going on in those couples. You can see if you think there's a couple that's going to have a good chance, and then you look at the market and they're like 18-1, like you said, Boz. It's something definitely to keep an eye on, especially with only like 10 days to go of the series.
I mean, their story's pretty amazing from a betting perspective. They were 80-1, the biggest price I know someone's backed them at when they were in their sort of many various argument stages. So, yeah, it's amazing. And, like, listen, it's not for everyone. I appreciate that. But we will bring you the very best of novelty betting throughout the season, from Eurovision to if Big Brother came back, my word, we definitely cover it. Don't worry, we've got you covered. Jake is going to be your man for anything fishing related or Love Island related. Right, we're probably coming now, I guess, guys, to our part where this is going to be the meat of the sandwich. This is our best bets for the weekend. We're putting ourselves under pressure. We've all gone to various special areas that we like or enjoy. Jake, I'll let you kick off the treble. I believe you're going to go with one of your UFC tips.
Yeah, so I spoke about Tom Aspinall, who is headlining UFC London this weekend. He's 8-11 to beat Curtis Blades. I know there's a few people who don't fancy him to win, but I think he's going to win this weekend, and he's going to really push on towards going for the title fights in future. So Tom Aspinall's my pick this week at 8-11.
Nice one. Farley, who's going in your treble? Bear in mind, this is very important. We need to get off to a winning start here. So I hope you've not gone for anything too obscure.
7-4. I'm going taking a little look over at Norway at the Elite Siren, their top division there. There's a team called Odd, and they're playing on the road at Kristiansund. Now, this is bizarre. So Odd are 7-4 to win this game, but I'm just going to tell you where they are in the league. Odd are 9th out of 16. They've got 19 points, 15 played, won 6, drawn 1, lost 8. So not a brilliant team. But Kristiansund are rock bottom, having only won 1 point all season. They are absolutely terrible by all accounts. And Odd are somehow like nearly 2-1. Now, Odd aren't even bad on the road. They've won out their last 4 on the road in the league. They've won 3, drawn 1. So they're not like bad on the road. Why on earth are they this price? I've had a little look into it. I can't really find much reasoning why they're not. Like, I don't know whether there's been some sort of, I don't know, injury that isn't particularly well reported or something. But either way, 7-4, I just thought, I'm going to take that on. I really like that. I really like that bet.
They not got a cup final like on Wednesday or something, Farley, and you're expecting the youth team to suddenly turn out? No?
Nope. Looks all good at the moment.
Fine. Well, at least one of us has got another logical tip again. I didn't mind Jake's. That one I'm not so sure. Norwegian football. think it might be getting the yellow card from the podcast if it doesn't win for us, Farley. Naval Power runs in the listed race tomorrow at Ascot, Saturday, the 4:10. It's a pretty average field size for this. We've only got the 5 runners. Naval Power represents Charlie Appleby. He's one of the best trainers on the flat. Very rarely drops below a 22% strike rate. William Buick's absolutely flying. He'll win the jockey's title this year, providing he doesn't get injured. Naval Power's won both his first 2 starts to date, kicking off with a nice win at Yarmouth on debut before following up at Leicester in a race which has worked out okay with those that have run since. The form looked fairly all right. He's just about even money at the moment. Putting him into our treble means that you're going to be getting, I think it's something like 13-2 for our 3 selections, all to win, providing the Norwegian football doesn't go the wrong way. I reckon we're in with a very good chance. No pressure, Farley. We're going to keep a league table throughout the season to see which of the 3 of us in our specialist areas or selections can do the best. And I'm really looking forward to kicking on. There's an awful lot to get stuck into. Give us your shouts, your suggestions. Tell us what you want to hear us tipping on as well. Between the 3 of us, we can cover most things. We're going to go through the NFL in detail with Farley when that comes back. He's a massive American sports fan. Jake's got football well and truly on lock, as well as Fishermania and other such novelty events. And I'll try and find you a winner or 2 on the races. But lads, unless there's anything more to add from yourself, Sam?
Nothing from me, guys.
Anything from you, Jake?
Just like, subscribe, follow us on socials. Everything's all up there, top of the screen. Everything's all on our
And get involved. We want to hear from you. If you think we are talking rubbish, we'll soon tell each other when we're talking rubbish. But we want to hear your comments as well. Give us a good roasting when we give a dreadful tip. Give us a little bit of credit if we do manage to find you some value. And let us know. Big question this week we'll leave you with. Who wins the Premier League title? Get those comments in below. And we look forward to catching up with you all next week.